Sorry about that. It's pressing the buttons, trying to be here as the host and then bring on a guest at the same time. Just proves that it's live. So I'm going to bring on my guest, my dear friend David Sumerall, and we're going to get into all things J6 for 30 minutes ish and bring you an update. David, thank you so much for joining me from that wonderful countryside that is behind you. It is much appreciated. How are you, sir?
Hey, it's good to see you. And as with many other things, this countryside was stolen from you in the first place. So, we talk about that on a different show. But there's so many coincidences that we could talk about for the next hour.
we could, in fact, for hours and hours and hours. But first of all, I just want to say publicly that every single thing since you and I did a conversation on January the 8th, 2021, without, this is not hyperbole, this is not blowing blue smoke up your backside, as they say on your side of the pond. This is true, that every single thing that has rolled out in regard to the Jan 6 prisoners, in regard to that day, you've spoken about it, and it's happened. Not that because of your experience being on the ground, and it's been quite incredible to me on a personal level how that has unfolded. David, could you give me an update, because you and I were having a very interesting discussion about generals, the whole thing of the Whitmer case, and it reminds everyone of some really important facts that somehow seem to slip away. And also, could you make any comment on the fact that suddenly there's been some Supreme Court activity as well? Take it wherever you want to take it, my friend.
Ooh, well, you just threw it all out there at once and said just hit anything you want to. Let's just kind of preface it by saying, as far as an expert goes, I think the strength is in being that firsthand witness. You know, I was a witness to the day. I saw what I saw. There's my perspective of what I experienced, what I witnessed with my own two eyes and ears, and what we discussed, firsthand. And I think that's what's been, taken away from a lot of these J6ers. They were witnesses. They experienced it. They're suffering the consequences of witnessing that event, being a part of history like that. So it's not that I'm super special. I work with a lot of super special people, and they are all specialists in what they witnessed and what they experienced. And then I'm the clearinghouse. They come to me with the stories, with the information, with the evidence. We help them find it. We help, look for things for everybody. And then I'm able to put that puzzle together from a different perspective once again than most people have an opportunity, or the time, or the drive, or the will, or perspective, or persistence, whatever you want to, throw in there for your words. But that's really the strength in what I do and what the team at StopHate.com does. So we watch current events, like the 1512 argument, where they're trying to, basically say it was the same as the Enron, where they were destroying the evidence, the files they were shredding. Now they're trying to use that argument to say J6ers were trying to, I guess, destroy the ballots or whatever. It's the obstruction of an official proceeding. And they're trying to use a real broad stroke, so that they can pick and choose later as to what they will or won't, prosecute, which falls back onto the January Sixers. The cap board, is it the Sergeant at Arms of the Senate or the House? Who's manufacturing these charges? Why didn't they charge the Kavanaugh people? You see the same blueprint literally from the Whitmer case to the January Sixers. I mean, it's the same setup, same Fed, same field director, Stephen D'Antuono, and it's like a repeat. And then if you want to compare it to another template, the General Flynn situation that he suffered through fighting the deep state single-handedly, blah, 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 into what the J6ers now are taking the heat, taking the abuse from the DOJ, from the judges, from the corrupt system to expose that side of it. So I think there's a lot of intricacy. And when you see the Supreme Court, ruling, we're going to find out, because for one, if they take that charge back and then they have to reverse a bunch of charges for other defendants in the past already, that's going to look real bad. So they want to try to keep that hold, that knee on our neck, for lack of a better way. Now, it's not only to get Trump, like, oh, if they can get these people, they get Trump. But it's also, that's the only leverage that they've had from keeping almost 800 of these cases from going to court in a battle, because you had the 4 misdemeanors, the picketing, parading, being on the property, staying on the property. And if you say, hey, I'm going to fight that because those are just misdemeanors, I don't feel like I did it well, then we're going to hit you with this 20-year felony. If they take that leverage away with that 1512, I think you're going to see a lot of reversal in people's decisions as to if they want to fight it or not. And what that means to help bog down that system in DC even more. So there's a lot of things that could happen. It could go either way.
You've often talked about the sort of pre-setup. You've just referred to the Whitmore case, and we just remind ourselves that, I mean, if we say there were 12 people involved there, 9 of them were members of the FBI, and you can't make this up. And that we're not saying anything that isn't true, because it's out there. It's out there already. You've made a comment to me as though there were prisons already lined up. They were already there, ready to take the J6 prisoners. What can you make a comment on that?
Yeah, let me just say, I think one of the other specialties that we've brought to this J6 situation storyline has been to ask the questions, because that's what really generates the thought and makes you think outside the box and be creative. I think the most popular question we started was, who is Ray Epps? Is Ray Epps a Fed? And we've seen, Congressman Massey spread that for us. And the next thing, it's viral and everyone knows about Ray Epps. So I think there's a part of that is the power in how we ask the questions, who we ask of, and what. It's very pointed, because 9 times out of 10 we already know the answer. We want the public to figure these things out for themselves. So you have to ask yourself, when was the DC gulag rented? When did they sign the lease that they knew they were going to be putting people in this place? And when did that all start? When did that process start? Was it January 7th? Or was it before January 6th? And who signed the lease? Why signed it? Who were the signers? All these questions need to be asked about every little situation. Then you need to look at HBO. Who paid the camera people to be there? Who told them where to be? Who paid for their travel and hotels? Who coordinated, maybe not just the cameramen, but some of the provocateurs that seem to be working hand in hand? How did they get access to the Fanon scene that they used for HBO? That's police body cam before any attorneys had it. Or did they get to look through all the body cams and pick that one out? Or were they given one and said, make it work? Or were they given 3 and said, pick the best one, and it just happened to be in there? That is like astronomical numbers to try to get that footage for an HBO thing. And then to see that he was late that day, Fanon was late to the Capitol, went straight to the tunnel, and was the only officer that went all the way through the tunnel, out of the tunnel, back through the tunnel in that day. I mean, he's some kind of superhuman, I guess. But then to see that, he wasn't asleep as they drug him down the tunnel. He was not unconscious. He was very much awake. He walked out on his own power. All the lies, the perjury that we've systematically just tried to prove to people. And then the censorship and the shadow banning. We can't get it out past a certain number. And it's that echo chamber. So we encourage people to think for themselves. I think it's much more effective if you learn how you've been tricked and why, that you'll learn from that more than someone's, you got pantsed, you got tricked, and yeah, you won't forget that. But it's different to be surrounded with like-minded people that are figuring it out at the same time, so you know how to kind of fix it and not let it happen again.
Well, you've been relentless on this, and I have personally witnessed it with my own eyes, physically being with you as well. You are relentless on this. You are pursuing the truth. And as a reminder, hence, there's 3 documentaries on your website of stophate.com. And it's and you've just alluded to that one gets played on Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson goes up to 2 million hits and then it's stopped.
That's right.
And when people say to you and I, "Oh no, what do you mean the censorship isn't real?" You have moved the dial from revealing the sad death of Ashley Babbitt, going through Benjamin Greason, Kevin Phillips, Roseanne Boyland, and then affirming the truth over what happened with Officer Signick. You have moved that dial, and I think one of the incredible skills that you have is orchestrating, is building a team, is getting this information from there to here. And I've witnessed that people do that. Can you remind us of some of the appalling cases? E.g., we think of the grandmother that was arrested for praying on the grass. We then have another couple, Mark and Jaleese, as well. Can you remind us of some of those events that are very, very real that happened that day?
Well, we don't have to go back far. We can just go to the prison right now. Felicia Conold, the girl that was pregnant that you interviewed not too long before
Mm,
she went to
mm,
prison to serve a
mm,
term. She's been under house arrest forever.
mm,
She had a baby while she was under house arrest. They wouldn't let her leave her property for the prenatal care or any preparation. They barely let her leave the house for a shower. We really had to persuade them to let her have a baby shower, get some of these supplies and things that she needed. And while she fed her other child the whole time, couldn't leave her house. These are horror stories and
yeah.
things that people don't understand. The price, I think, that these J6ers are paying, not just that day, but since then, in every aspect of their life, from their church, their social life, their schools, their community, their jobs, their future, their history, their past. It affects every bit. And then you wonder, why would somebody do that? Why can't they just bend the knee and make all this go away? Say, whatever you need to say to get out of trouble. Well, they can't any easier than I can stop fighting for these people. Am I obsessed? Yeah. Why? Because my friends are in prison and they need to be out. They don't get Thanksgiving. They don't get Independence Day. They don't get all the things that we take for granted. If we think we have freedom, but when you ask a J6er, they'll tell you a completely different answer.
Absolutely, and we're seeing it play out. We've seen it play out in Canada in a different way in regard to the convoy. We've seen the FBI giving advice to the Canadian authorities in regard to that. People having their bank accounts shut down, etc. Over here, there's been that. Then there's the whole issue of free speech, and the censorship is off the charts, as we've just witnessed with a conservative conference happening in Belgium and the police turning up and shutting it down, even though legally the next day it's then opened up. This is real. David, if we look at the needle, was say on 0 and then it's pointing to 10. How far do you think the needle has managed to move in regard to American citizens actually actually understanding what's going on in regard to J6? I'll temper it with this, which is appalling. When people were even questioning the sad death of Ashley Babbitt and saying, "Well, did that really happen?" I hate to say that because I've had people say that to me, which is appalling. Where do you think the needle is now in regard to revealing the truth?
Oh, if it were a percentage, we'd be at 2 or 3% nationwide. Let's be honest. It's
Wow.
a year to get past the fact that Ashley Babbitt was not the only person that was murdered. It took us
Mm,
2 years
yes.
to get the rest of the names out. It took us 3 years to get to where everybody kind of knew that Officer Sicknick's lie was death was a lie. That Kevin Greason, Benjamin Phillips. We got the details on there. Of course, Roseanne Boyland, MPD Lila Morris beat her while she lay unconscious on the ground. We've got the facts now, and unfortunately, that's still within our echo chambers, within our circles, within our sphere of influence, if you will. And those are really low numbers. When it goes to the carryover to the other side, no. There's still a great disconnect from what they saw, what they were allowed to see, much like, my pastor, and I pick on him all the time. I need to talk to him about it again so he can have a chance to defend himself. But, to say, hey, we saw what we saw on TV, a guy in a buffalo hat, led a bunch of people in our Capitol and did juvenile things. Okay, so you saw what you saw. Now, kind of preface that with people have suffered for 3.5 years for some juvenile stuff. Then, where are we at and what's really going on? It's worth revisiting to say, maybe I didn't get the full story. Maybe I just saw what I was supposed to see. Maybe those are prisoners just like any other prisoners, and that's who we're supposed to minister to. Let's not be political in who we choose to or choose not to minister to. It's the orphan, it's the widow, and it's the prisoner. And all three of those were results of January 6th. And we need to really do like Trump says for the J6 hostages, support these people because they deserve our support. They really do. They're standing for us. They could go home. They could bend a knee, but they've already bent their knee to Jesus Christ. They're not going to bend it to a tyrannical government that's trying to take those freedoms that God gave us away. It's not going to work. It's not going to go down. And these people have proven that they are that founding fathers material. Mark, when I go around and talk to people, I try to tell them about the American Gulag Chronicles book, the letters from prison and the art of confinement. It's the easiest way for you to get their stories from their hand, from their writings, their artwork, their admissions, their, why did I go? What did I experience? What has it been like? What's happened to my family? Those are very important, but then it will encourage you to be a part of that program and correspond by letter to some of these guys. Start doing the pen pal thing. And then maybe you'll be spurred to go to the next level and say, I want to support these guys. I'll pitch in $5 a month or $10 a month or $100 a month until you're free. I want to help support your family. I understand you're the breadwinner. I want to get to know you and tell you how grateful I am for the sacrifice that you're making for me and for my children and for my children's children. Because Mark, you know as well as I do, this is one of the most important events in American history, if not the most, because it's an intentional device attempt to split America right down the middle with a huge Fed Fest operation. We see it for what it is. And it's to divide this wedge between the American people where we won't communicate, won't talk, won't trust each other. And it keeps us from realizing who's shaking the jar. We're just the ants in the jar, and somebody's shaking the jar, and that's the government. And it's every single time. And I just hope it's a wake up moment for people to say, man, maybe this is what happened to some of the other groups' rallies that turned violent. Maybe they weren't supposed to be violent either. And maybe other communities have been dealing with this, for decades, and we never noticed because it wasn't our community. And maybe there's a lot of things that need to be fixed that we can only fix as a people. The politicians just want more prisons, more judges, more sentences, more people in the system for more money and more human trafficking. We see how that works. So why don't we as a people say enough's enough, man? You're abusing citizens inhumanely so many times, and people don't deserve treated like that. These aren't those kind of institutions to try to rehabilitate people. They're in there to profit off of our misfortune of having our foot stuck in their system.
David, people are quite shocked by this when you say to them their constitutional rights, the First Amendment rights, have been suspended in regard to the court cases. Could you explain that? And we've just got about another 10 minutes. Explain that and explain how that how that actually plays out, because we've got so many people that don't believe you, don't believe us when that's said.
No, I totally understand. And listen, it's hard to believe. How can you say that? I mean, we have God-given rights, inalienable, unalienable, inalienable rights, right? I mean, this is what we hear. The, First Amendment, Second Amendment, these are the amendments, and they're from God. They're not from the government. The government didn't make this stuff up. They're from God. The government just wrote them down so the government wouldn't infringe on our God-given rights. I mean, that's the way this game works, right? That's the way we wanted the whole American system, Constitution, Bill of Rights, all that. Okay, so we know how it works. But if you went to D.C. to protest, to use your freedom of speech or your right to assemble or your right to redress your grievances or the right to practice your religion, which so many people prayed and sang to God on the property there, or the freedom of the press. I mean, those are the main things in the First Amendment, right? When you get to court, the first motion the prosecution makes to the judge is, Your Honor, we make a motion that they cannot use the First Amendment as an excuse in their defense. And the judge, okay, no, you can't use that. So now you have to defend for the rest of the case against why you were there, what you were doing there. You're on video, you're in the pictures, and we say you came to overthrow this government. Now prove you didn't. And hey, all we have to do is say you were here. Here's you on the video. Here's you waving at a cop. Here's you walking down the hall. So you're obviously here to overthrow the government, because you can't say you were here for free speech. You were here to gather. You were here to redress your grievances. You were here for freedom of religion. You definitely weren't here with the media. None of that's going to fly. You can't use that in your defense. And I don't think the American public really understands what that looks and feels like. And then the other big question is, how are people in jail? Have they really not been charged? They've been in jail for 3 years plus, and they haven't even been charged. Wait up, folks. Sure, they've been charged. They haven't been tried. They haven't been to trial. So in the very beginning, the attorneys told a lot of these guys, look, the government doesn't have their database together yet. They're still getting all their video together. It's going to be August or September. Do not push your trials right now, because the government may throw the book at you. They may get you for sedition and 20 years. And so it's in your best interest to wait for this video to come out. And you say it's going to exonerate you. So we'll wait for the video and it'll exonerate you. So sign off on your right to a speedy trial, your due process rights, sign off on that. And then when the video comes out, we'll get this all straightened out. But if you go to trial without it, you're going to get hammered. So these guys are like, oh, look, I know this is going to set me free. So I'll sign off on the speedy trial. So when the video here, I can get. Those are the same original guys that are still sitting there. You got to think how many 1,000+ people have come into this system, been tried, gone through their trial. A lot of them been to jail, served their entire time. Now they're out on probation. And we still have these original couple of guys that still haven't had a trial in 3.5 years. So that's how it worked. We don't have 1,400 people sitting in jail with no charges. We don't have 300 people sitting in jail with no charges. Everybody's been charged with something. Not everybody's had a trial. And those are basically the people from the very beginning. They got tricked out of their due process rights, thinking that they were doing a good thing for themselves when they were being manipulated the whole time. And then the government, like we said earlier, uses this 15, 12, 20-year sentence to hold over people's heads and say, don't take the plea deal. We're going to make sure that you do some jail time. Maybe not 20 years, but we're going to get a couple. And they're like, look, I got a family. I want to get back to my life. I just want this over with. I will bend the knee. I'll do a couple of months and I'll do a couple of years probation. Just let me off of this merry-go-round, because it's killing people, committing suicide, their families, their houses, their job. Like I said, everything in their past and their future is just being decimated. And that's the part that people, they have a disconnect. Because half the people think, well, maybe they did something wrong. Maybe they were violent. Half the people think they were juvenile and they were just acting out and should not have done that. And a lot of people think, hey, as soon as you saw something pop off, you should have left. Well, I'm sorry, y'all aren't my friends, because we don't just leave when we see other people in distress, when we hear people scream, when we see people, going up in smoke. That kind of makes some people go toward it because they want to help and see what's going on. I have story after story about people rescuing people rescuing cops. I mean, this is the thing. It was a horrible situation for everyone to be put in. That's not saying whose fault anything was. It was a horrible situation. It was a very dangerous, volatile place. And a lot of people got hurt because of that. Now, when you find out who caused that, that's part of the thing of asking the questions. I could sit here and point at individuals all day. Oh, well, he pushed him and he pushed him and he got there first. But that's not the way you get to the bottom of this. Who set the whole thing up? Who choreographed the chaos? Who had HBO there early? Who worked with the FBI? Why was the CIA sitting around so close? What are we doing here, folks? And why, if there's confusion about the day's events and what happened and what transpired, why is that not erring to the side of the citizen when there's confusion with the government to say, hey, y'all have all this wrong. You're wrong about all these facts. You're wrong about the deaths. No police died that day. Only civilians died that day. Officer Sicknick's death was a lie. You've got all kinds of police brutality that you've claimed was objectively reasonable. And you're thinking that we're the bad guys still. And for these judges to make these biased statements and these jurors to think getting away with some payback for something like it's O.J. Simpson again, like a repeat. This is where we are and I think, man, I think the light's coming on for everybody to be able to see what's actually happening.
You just made a very interesting reference to the O.J. Simpson case, and the other day you said something that I had never thought about, that because you just said payback for that. Could you briefly describe what your thinking is behind that?
Well, I tell you what it is, and I've heard it from jurors that were on that case. I mean, the previous thing before the OJ trial was the LA riots, and they saw Rodney King, a black guy that was on crack cocaine, PCP, whatever, whacked out of his mind, getting beaten on the legs with billy sticks by this group of police. It was eventually tried in court. The police were justified. It was reasonably acceptable. It was within their rule book of the police actions of what they do, and they were acquitted. But the media had used that little clip of them beating this guy and then stoked the flames about the trial. So when they were acquitted, like instantly, people took off, looted, burned, steal. You know, you had little Asian people on their roof with rifles ready to shoot people, and it was a horrible, horrible thing. That's when I started StopHate.com, was because of that event. But when you look at what happened with the jury and the OJ thing, they treated that like it was payback for the Rodney King verdict. Like all the destruction to their community, all the pain that was caused to them because the law was out and they acquitted the police. Look, I don't always agree with the verdict, of course, but there's a difference between innocent and guilty, and there's a difference between revenge and payback. And there's no place for that when you're on the jury. When you're a jury, you have the power to outrank the judge. And you could actually set these people free because of what you see that they're doing to them. They're innocent. And when they show you videos in court, they say, look, here's this guy being innocent, and you still find him guilty and put him in prison. You can't do that for sport. There are repercussions. It's called conduct. You can be fined or jailed. So, you know, I got in trouble. They talked about my tweets in court a week or two ago because I've been saying things. You know, these juries, somebody needs to tell these ignorant jurors, you know, what's going on, because they don't know. Somebody needs to educate. Oh, you're intimidating. No, I'm educating them. It's a big difference. I'm not anybody name. I'm not trying to do that. I need for them to know there are consequences, and it would be the equivalent of if anyone in America gets caught with that BLM group, we're having all their trials in Texas. We're going to have a party and a barbecue and a square dance, and we're going to have a big shindig, and we're going to find all these BLMers guilty because that's what we do in Texas, and that's fair, right? No, that's not fair. So you got to have a jury, and if you can't move them out of D.C., where it's obviously a 95%, you know, D.C. pool for the bad guys, in our opinion, and for the judges to make the statements they make. And then 2 more points, Mark. I think they're really important. The judges live in D.C. The juries live in D.C. They're victims. You can't have the trials. It's like having the kid the parent whose kid got killed on the jury, or the rape victim on the jury. You're not supposed to do that. There's quite a conflict. If you're the victim, you don't need to be there. That has not stopped any of these comments from these judges or the jurors laughing about some of these convictions. There have been articles, there have been slips. We do keep track. And I think that's a couple of points that people really need to consider when they're looking at the big picture of how this transfer has not been allowed to happen and why they want to keep it under that control. And then the last is that the DC judges want to keep their thumb on these J6ers even when they're on probation. So say they go back to Texas and the judge wants to know from that probation officer if anything happens, call that judge. It doesn't go to that district. It does, okay, you did your part with the legal system and they served their time. Now it's your part with the legal system. You're going to be over his probation and you monitor him, and you do. No, they still have to check back to DC. And if anything happens, they're going to take these people straight back to DC. Can you see that control and that level that they're trying to, and all their communications are on the same level as Al-Qaeda or any terrorist MS-13 stuff? They check all your letters and mail. They go through everything, delay everything. You might need a message from your family. It could be weeks before you get it because their system is so bogged down looking through, terrorist paper. It's the worst thing.
David, I just want to thank you for joining me. Could you just remind everyone where they can find you and the American Gulag Chronicles book, The Art of Confinement?
Well, hopefully they can't find me. I do my best just to lay low. No. Touche, my friend. I'd prefer not to be found. It's okay. I'm doing all right. No, StopHate.com. You can always contact us on StopHate.com. Social media stuff where there's a follow us on our website too. X is probably the most used right now. Help Stop Hate, at Help Stop Hate. And of course, the American Gulag Chronicles is lettersfromprison.us is the easiest. You can go to AmericanGulagChronicles.com if you want to spell it out. I like lettersfromprison.us, or just go to stophate.com, scroll down till you see the books and click on that. Please go check out the documentaries. There's actually 4. We did that little short one, 1,000 Days of Terror, and stuck it in there. Yeah. So we've done 1 documentary a year for 4 years. Everything's free. You know, if you do want to support our work and help us continue to put out quality material like that, just go to stophate.com/support, or stop by the shop and get a t-shirt or whatever you can do. Use the MyPillow promo link for your MyPillow products, POW, if you want to help the prisoners and us, or just use promo code STOPHATE if you want to help our team with what we do. And it's mypillow.com/stophate or /POW. And those are great ways to help, because those are fantastic products. I got to throw a plug in and say towels, pillows, dog pillows, literally, people, the sheets. We use all those products myself. And I'm upset if I have to go to get a clean towel and there's not a MyPillow towel. I'm upset. They tried to. I'm serious. That's my little plug. And I drink the coffee too. The MyPillow, my coffee. Telling you, it's a good way, and it's just changing your habits just a little bit. Buy from somebody else and help somebody that does a ministry like me. It's a real easy way to do that. I appreciate all the help we get, Mark. And as usual, every time I get to spend a minute or two with you is a blessing, brother. I enjoy the iron sharpening iron. I want to do a part 2, man. And listen, I've been getting more and more questions about Mike Pence's role in January 6th. And I want people to once again think outside of the box and think for themselves, and maybe get ahead, maybe not, maybe get behind, maybe be totally confused, but to do that, you know, in a way that involves freedom, not just listening to the propaganda or listening to the talking heads, and kind of get a different perspective. Not that I'm right about everything, but I have this idea that, and I don't want to blow the plans for the winning team either, but I don't think at this point that it would. I think it's inevitable that the expose happen. I'd like to be a part of that.
Amen. David, thank you. We'll do a part 2. We'll schedule that. That'd be fantastic. Very grateful for part 1. So everybody, thank you very much for joining me, joining David. Thank you for the privilege of your time. And please act on everything that David's saying. It'd be really, really appreciated. So I'm going to play us out, my brother. Thank you so much.
Mark.